my car? Does it matter the color? Could I just put straight water? Or what about straight coolant? Does it really matter? Yes guys, it does. It's very important. And today on Tony the Technician's channel, we're going to be going over different types of coolants and why it's important to stick to the coolant that is made for your vehicle. So we're going to be going over why it's important, some of the differences in them, and what can happen if you use the wrong coolant in your vehicle. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and if you do, make sure to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and as always, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you guys so much. Okay guys, so like I stated, we're going to be going into different types of coolant. This is just one that I have here at home. I think I used it on my Camaro when I had the V6 in it. And this is actually a universal antifreeze coolant. And we'll get into what the differences are on those. But it is very important on these newer vehicles to use the correct coolant. You're going to run into things such as different colored coolants. They have pink, green, purple, red, orange, blue. I mean, they have a lot of different coolant colors out there. And back in the day, it was basically just green and orange. And basically, as long as you stuck to the correct color, you were good to go. Nowadays, that is not the way to do it. Different manufacturers, like let's say Chevy makes a pink one and Ford makes a pink one as well. That does not mean they're the same. You need to be very careful. Something I suggest is either look in your owner's manual, look it up online, or if you really can't find it, call the manufacturer or the dealer that's closest to you. Tell them your vehicle, your make and model, and they will tell you the specific coolant that you should use, and you could either buy it through them or find it at your local parts store. But with these newer vehicles, you definitely want to make sure you're using the right one, and we'll get into why. Now, there have been many different ways of combining these antifreezes and coolants and inhibitors and stuff in the coolant, and the most common ones are IAT, inorganic acid technology, OAT and HOAT, which is organic acid technology and hybrid organic acid technology. And basically some of them just removed inhibitors, added inhibitors and stuff like that. But we'll really get into some of the other stuff in a little bit. So every vehicle or every manufacturer is going to have a specific coolant for their vehicle. The reason that's important is because they have different amounts and different types of inhibitors in them, and when you use the wrong coolant, you run into certain issues. Let's say you use the wrong coolant, or you mix coolants, and you could possibly have a chemical reaction where the coolant actually starts to form with the other coolant and it turns into this gel substance, and it gets all over in the engine, radiator, water pump, all of that stuff. It can also wear down components such as the water pump, radiator hoses, things like that. It can cause rust, corrosion, and many other things. So that's why it's important to use the correct coolant and don't go mixing coolants, because then you're going to have a bigger problem on your hands. I did write myself some notes so I can give you as much information as I can and try and set you guys up for success. Now, a lot of this is getting into the coolant, and you might just be better off just calling your vehicle manufacturer, the dealer, and finding out which one your vehicle needs. But I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. So coolant was first invented in the name of it, coolant. Vehicles were having a problem overheating. Vehicles used to be air-cooled on some vehicles, and when they moved over to cooling the engines, they came out with like a water with some inhibitors in it in order to keep the vehicle cool, but not allow that water to corrode inside the engine. And then they realized in the wintertime, in some parts, depending where you live, the water would freeze. So that's where the antifreeze got added, and that is to protect against freezing temperatures. So whether you call it coolant or antifreeze, It's the same thing. It's either or. It's both a coolant and an antifreeze. So that's where you get both names from. Other than that, anytime possible, just like I said, use the manufacturer's recommended coolant for your vehicle. Older vehicles, it wasn't such a big deal, but nowadays with newer vehicles, it is a little bit more important. And when switching coolants, instead of taking the chances of possibly mixing two coolants together, you want to make sure that you do a nice, good flush on your vehicle. Try and get as much of that old coolant out of there as possible. Most coolants are ethylene glycol or propylene glycol. Ethylene glycol is toxic, but it is a little bit better at transferring the heat into the radiator and stuff like that and dissipating it, where propylene glycol is not toxic to the environment, but it's not as good at dissipating the heat throughout the engine. So a majority of the time you're going to run into your coolants that are ethylene glycol. What else do I have here? Mixing coolants can also affect boiling points, because if you have some old coolant in there and the inhibitors are wearing out and you put new coolant in there, it can affect the boiling point because you don't have the right mixture in there. Corrosion, gel, things like that. The most common mixture is 50-50, which should legally be freezing temperature protection to -35 or 34 degrees Fahrenheit. So pretty damn good protection there. And that's going to be a majority of people out there is going to use a 50-50 mix. That's not for everybody though, because people that are in extreme cold areas, they might go with a little bit higher mixture of the coolant to water in order to protect against that extreme cold weather. When you're purchasing your coolant, you can either go with a 50-50 pre-diluted blend. It already has the water in the jug with the coolant and the antifreeze, so you don't have to mix anything. It's a perfect 50-50. But you're paying the same price for this as you would just a gallon of coolant and antifreeze. So if you don't mind going and buying some water, you're actually going to save yourself some money, because right here you're paying 50% of this is just water. So you're paying a lot for water here. But it's easier, maybe keep one of these in your car if your vehicle tends to overheat or you have a leak or something, then you don't have to worry about mixing water. That's another thing I want to get into, but I'll wait for that in just a sec. When mixing coolant antifreeze with water, you want to use either a distilled water or water that is specifically made for like batteries and coolant. It's basically been engineered to not have the hard minerals that your tap water or the water that you use around the house. That water has hard minerals in it which tend to corrode and rust parts. So that's why it is not recommended to just grab your garden hose and fill up your radiator and stuff with water. Straight water will definitely corrode and rust the parts in your vehicle. And running just coolant, coolant doesn't have heat dissipation like water does. Water dissipates heat much better than any other fluid. So the coolant in antifreeze has the inhibitors in order to protect against rust, corrosion, and freezing, where the water is used in the mixture in order to dissipate the heat. I already talked about the water having hard minerals. Straight coolant I went over that. Specific coolant has the correct inhibitors and usually lasts 100 to 150,000 miles. And that is for the vehicle specific coolant that you get. That stuff is good for much longer than a universal coolant like this one. Now granted, this bottle does say you don't have to do a coolant flush for 150,000 miles, but the thing with these universal coolants is the inhibitors, usually it's about 85% ethylene glycol and like 10 to 15% your inhibitors, which is the part that protects against corrosion and rust and everything like that. but certain vehicles call for a certain amount of a specific inhibitor, where the universal just combines all of the most common inhibitors into this coolant, so they can say it works for American cars, Asian cars, European cars, and all of that. But in all actuality, it doesn't have the right amount of the specific inhibitor to protect for 150,000 miles. This will work a majority of the time, but you're going to have to do a flush probably 30 to 50,000 miles instead of that 100 to 150,000 miles. You need to change coolant because inhibitors do wear out. That's why there's that 50 to 150,000 or 5-year recommended flush, because after a certain amount of time and heat cycles and things like that, the inhibitors in there that prevent against the rust and corrosion, they tend to wear out, and that's where you're going to start having problems. Stuff's going to start wearing, and instead of just doing a coolant flush, you're going to be doing a water pump change, a radiator swap, things like that. Or it could be a lot worse if you overheat your engine and crack a block or crack a head, then you're in big bucks. So some inhibitors could be borates. I think I'm saying that correctly. It was basically used on the old iron blocks and heads or engines, and that was its main inhibitor. But nowadays, a lot of the vehicles are European, or the European, American, and Asian. They're basically all switching to aluminum, and that calls for a different inhibitor. So they have silicates, phosphates, and a few other inhibitors that help. Well, European cars take different inhibitors than Asian cars, and American cars take different inhibitors from, European cars. So each one of these coolants has a different inhibitor in it, and the specific amount in order to protect the best for that engine. So that is why it's important to stick to the right coolant. Now, can you use water in a pinch? Say you break down on the side of the road and you just carry a gallon of distilled water with you? Yes, that is perfectly fine, but that is a temporary fix. You don't want to continue to drive your vehicle on that just distilled water, because you're going to start having that buildup of corrosion and rust and stuff like that. I'm thinking I'm forgetting to mention a couple things, but guys, that's my input on specific coolants and universal coolants. You can use a universal coolant as well. Maybe keep one of these in your vehicle if you break down, because it will get you to where you need to go as long as your leak isn't bad. It will get you to the nearest shop, or maybe if you have to drive on it for a couple of days, that's going to be fine. But that gelling can occur after a few thousand miles, so you definitely want to make sure that you do a good flush, or take it to somebody and have it professionally done. Get that entire system flushed out and cleaned, and get that correct coolant put in there, especially if you own a newer vehicle. So that's my input, guys, and I really hope you guys enjoyed. I wanted to get back into the automotive stuff. I know I've done a lot of tool reviews and tool hauls and tool tours and stuff like that, and I kind of wanted to get back into maybe just informing you guys a little bit more about the automotive stuff. So I'm going to be doing a few more videos on this. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to try and cover as much as I possibly can for you guys, and I hope it really helps. This was actually an idea given to me from one of my best friends growing up, Sean. He's one of the guys that runs the UndergroundVaperz Channel, and he just gave me some ideas a few nights ago, which I thought were absolutely amazing, because you guys already know I ask you guys all the time for new video ideas, and I do put them on a list, and I stick to them. So this is just a new thing that I'm going to be doing, and I really hope you guys enjoy. If you do, make sure to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and as always, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we're going to announce the gift giveaway winner either tomorrow or the next day. So if you haven't checked out my 1500 sub gift giveaway video, it is my Home Depot tour. Go check that out right now. I'll link it right up here, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.